Hello, my name is Mate, and you have reached the 11th episode of the In-Betweeners Checkup. I'm here today with Sammi Reyes, who has very kindly got up very early in the morning over in the States to have a chat with me, I guess, around her journey thus far, what she's been up to over the last little bit, and how we can take something from her experience and apply it to our own lives. So, Sammi, over to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. I am a college student, just finished up my first year of college, going into my second at San Diego State University, which is in California. I am a motivational speaker, a inspirational podcaster, as well as a writer. I'm almost done with my first book. It's going to be coming out in the next 2 years, hopefully. But yeah, I think for me, I started my personal development journey back in 2018. And since then, I've sort of, learned so much about me and, my journey to heal and my journey to sort of find a better version of myself really inspired me to, share those tips that I was learning with others. And that's when I started the podcast in 2019, because I was so, I've always loved to help others, but I really wanted to do it in this way, something that I had experienced personally. And so I launched Fashion Your Passion podcast January of 2019. And, since then we've been on the up and up with that. And it's forever changed my life. It's gotten me into, speaking around the country and talking about, how to find your passion, how to find your dream life, how to curate that dream life with a bunch of high schoolers and college students. And it's just been such a dream for me to be able to do this at such a young age and find my calling at such a young age too. So that's a little bit about me for right now.
Yeah. Hey, look, that's awesome. And I think, we can spend, I'm talking from experience here because I've got a few years on you, but I mean, we can spend a long time trying to find exactly where we fit in the world as such. And I take my hat off to you for being able to do that at such a young age. And I'm thinking there was probably something that acted as a bit of a catalyst in terms of creating that situation for you. Are you happy to share a bit around that?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I know I tell that story and people are like, wait, like it's not all sunshine and rainbows, is it? And I was like, it's definitely not, Yeah, so basically sort of, the peak of that was when I was, what was it, when I was 12 or 13. I sort of, I was like running track for weeks. Like it was like the first, season of, track and field. And I was just feeling a little bit off. Like there was just like this one week where I just, just didn't feel right, wasn't motivated to go to track, wasn't motivated to do really anything at all. I came home every day. I took like a mental health week from track and I came home every day and I just sort of sat on the couch and like just did nothing and for the entire evening. And then, at like 8 p.m. I was like, oh crap, I have to do my homework. So I had to do it then. And that lasted like 2-3 years. I didn't really know what was going on. And then in my second year of high school, my English teacher actually assigned us a project. And we had to come up with a question that we were curious about. And we had to find literature that we had, talked about in class or other literature to answer that question. So my question was, why do teens suffer with mental illness, mental health, and stuff like that? And how can we break the stigma around that? And, how does it affect, themselves and their parents and their friends and, their community members? And in that research, I found out that I personally struggled with anxiety and depression. I had self-diagnosed myself at that point because I just saw through my research that, like, I had the answers to what was going on with me. And so there was sort of a little bit of a light in that, which is super, super exciting for me personally. And then I went to, I was sort of just like, sort of maneuvering through this new diagnosis for myself. I was like, maybe I don't, maybe I do, like, like I was just sort of in between it. And then I took a semester abroad, my third year in high school. I took a semester abroad to Israel, and I was there for 4 months. It was, the best and the worst semester of my life. I loved Israel. I'm obsessed with, I always put my Judaism first, but I love Israel. I'm obsessed with it. It was so amazing to like live there and just experience it all. But the worst part about it was I was so homesick. I was so, just like not in the same element as who I used to be. And when I came home, I barely even recognized myself. I was so afraid of my surroundings. I was so afraid of myself. I literally, like, I remember standing at my locker one day in high school, and I had to, like, look over my shoulder to make sure no one was, like, there, because I felt someone walking towards me and, like, watching me. And so at that point, I was like, wait, like, whoa, like, what's going on? And so luckily enough, my aunt is actually a social worker. And so I was with her one night. I was just talking about all these things. And she's saying, like, I think you need to go into therapy. And I was like, I've been wanting to for months, but I just didn't, like, know how to tell anyone. So, we sat down together. We went on psychologytoday.com. We found a therapist who, like, she was like, yeah, like, she should work, like, she would work well with you and stuff like that. And what was it? January of 2018, that's when I started going to therapy. I, went in there, and I sort of knew how much trauma I had from my semester in Israel from, previous years ahead. And I knew there was going to be a lot to uncover. And I've always been sort of an open book, so it wasn't really an issue for me to sort of, like, tell her, like, what's going on with me, and then about a few months down the line, like, she officially diagnosed me with anxiety and depression, and I think it was such a relief to have that diagnosis. But I was like, okay, now I'm diagnosed, what do I do with this?
Yeah.
And for years, that was what the middle of my third year of high school. For a few years, I had wrestled with that, like, what do I do with it now? And so the beginning of my senior year of high school, I remember so vividly. In the fall, I was put in this public speaking class, and my public speaking teacher, who turned into, one of my greatest friends to this day, who turns into, one of the biggest mentors in my life, we, in October, like, of that year, we started talking, just about, like, little things, because one of her best friends in the school I had in previous year. So, like, we were just chatting about that and whatever. And then I remember I started opening up to her. And then around, like, November, December-ish, she really was like, Sammi, like, you need to stop letting your anxiety and depression control you, and you need to control it. Like, it does not have to rule your life. And I think from that point, I realized, like, what I had been doing. I was so afraid of what to do next with my diagnosis that I just let it do whatever it needs to do. I didn't really have any sort of control over my life. And for someone like me who is a control freak pretty much, I was struggling so bad because I had nothing to control. I really wasn't doing anything proactive to, sort of enhance my life or to enhance this diagnosis that I got. And so, around January time, the New Year time, I just found, like, I sat down with her for 2 hours, I think it was, and we sort of went through, play by play of, like, what can I do to sort of take control of this diagnosis? Yeah. So I immediately, signed up. Like, these are little things, but for me, it was something that I had always wanted to commit to, but I never did. So I signed up for the gym, and I went every single day, from February to even, like, just moving forward. I went every single day, and then I started to eat better, and I started to, get more sleep, and I started to sort of, like, rely less on my phone, and I would just, do all these little things that, listen to motivational podcasts and watch, YouTube shows and stuff like that. And, just starting that journey, like, my whole brain just was, like, it just transformed, and I give so much credit to her, because I don't think that I would be where I am today without her. I wouldn't be sitting here with you without her, and it's so significant. So that's a little bit, I know I'm getting, like, I'm moving forward a lot, but that's sort of, like, the story to the catalyst of my own personal development journey, but also the podcast.
Yeah, no, that's great. And listen, I think it's great that you're able to be so forthcoming with your situation and talk about that dynamic, and I guess the place that the people you had, whether it be your family or your teachers, were able to support you in that. And, like, I'm not too sure if you're aware, but youth suicide in New Zealand, we probably have one of the highest rates in the world. And you talk about that stigma, and look, teenagers, they're going through a lot anyway without putting further dynamics in there. And yes, I mean, I was once self-conscious and very, I mean, I still have periods of anxiety and stuff these days as well. But I feel like it was amplified during that period. For someone who perhaps didn't have family members within the social services or a teacher that really made a difference in their life, what is available to younger people these days?
Yeah, so I know, it's hard for me to talk just like internationally, but I
Yeah.
know, but like if you sort of like if anyone listeners look up this stuff I'm talking about, they'll find like the international numbers and stuff like that. But there is what I used to rely on, which is the crisis text line. So it's, if you text start to 741-741, they literally, you just like text with a random person who is trained in, like crisis stuff, and you just talk with them about different things, and it's so helpful. Obviously there's the suicide hotline and stuff like that. I know a lot of teens like don't like to call people on the phone, so that text line is really something that I hold so close to my heart. But also I think in terms of like things that aren't necessarily just like, a random spontaneous thing, I think that, therapy is available to everyone. And I think that there are so many therapists out there who are willing to work with you if your situation doesn't provide you the fact like you can afford it or anything like that. I think that, I know I don't talk about it enough, but therapy is something that pretty much changed my life. I think it's set up, from that moment where I decided to sort of take control of my own life, therapy has set me up for that to sort of succeed in a way. And I think, I'm still going to therapy to this day. It's not really going to quote unquote end anytime soon, because it's so beneficial for me in so many different ways. And, there's also, I think also just not being, it's obviously it's easier said than done, but not being afraid to reach out to anyone, even if it's just one person. Like I know for me, there were just some people who like I knew I could not reach out to, like they were off limits, like I just wouldn't tell them anything. But then there were others who I was like, oh, you know what, maybe like I can actually, trust this person, reach out to them. I know, through my years of high school, I have been so fortunate to have been so close to a lot of my teachers.
Mm.
And so sort of like each year I sort of had someone else to rely on, which was super nice. And that way I had sort of like an outlet in a sense. But I think that, maybe even telling a friend of yours, like, hey, like, I'm really struggling right now. Like, can you help me with this or that? I think that what I've learned is that friends are really hard to do that with because they don't want to, they don't want to see you upset, and then you don't want to be a burden and stuff like that. So, I think finding an adult or just texting, the crisis hot text line, even if you're not in a crisis, they still help you out in a sense. And then just starting to go to therapy, or even they have online, they have a like quote like an online therapy, and it's called I think it's called like 7cups.com or something like that. And
Okay.
it's the same as a crisis text line, just not as like, sort of like in a crisis type thing where you can just hop on, that you tell them about your situation, then you just start, again, text or messaging with someone who is trained to sort of, figure out your situation and stuff like that. So those are a few of the resources that I know and I've used personally, that I am really, really sort of, fond of.
Cool. You mentioned that, I guess, through that project you did at school, that you were able to, I guess, self-diagnose yourself. For those people who perhaps are in a situation they're not exactly sure what it is they're in, what are some of those symptoms that you were able to notice about your situation?
Yeah, so for me, I think the biggest thing was just a lack of joy and a lack of motivation. I've always been someone who, I haven't been the most like extroverted, cheery person, but I've been someone who's been very ambitious. I've been someone who, always gets things done 2 weeks prior to the deadline. And when I started to do my homework due the next day at 8 p.m., I knew something was up. I knew something, it sounds so mundane, but it's like it was so prominent in my life because it sort of altered my entire personality in a sense. I think also just, they were, I was just eating a lot more of like not good foods, I think I was more on edge a lot. I think I wasn't able to sleep. And then there were some days, like, during the week I wasn't able to sleep. And on the weekends I would sleep all day. I remember this one winter break that I had in high school. I remember I literally, all I did that winter break was, stay in my bed. I would bring my food, my meals to my bed. And I would just watch Netflix every single day for those 2 weeks. I stayed in bed. I woke up at 8, was up till 4:30, just like watching Netflix. I fell asleep for 4 hours, woke up again, did the same routine again and again because I was just so unmotivated to do anything. Like every time my parents went out, I would throw a fit. I was like, I don't want to go out with you. I'm not going out with you. I don't want to. Like, why do we have to go out? I would literally, I would start crying. It was so crazy. And then I think also like in terms of, like moving forward with like, just with my situation, I think also it was like my heart raced a lot faster in certain situations, like with that anxiety piece, it was like, because my depression and anxiety, they sort of like take turns, it's like one's more prominent one time than the other. So it really started out with depression, then moved on to anxiety. But I think, just like my heart racing, I was, I was sweating more. Every time I was sitting at my desk, my leg was tapping, I didn't even realize it. And I constantly had to write things down that were in my brain because my brain was just racing. I couldn't focus on anything. Yeah. So I think a lot of those things, like those are very general, but I think that, I think just in general, if you sort of see yourself changing in a sense, and you don't feel like it's right, you feel like it's off, I think definitely like, talk it through with someone. Something that I didn't do, like, talk to your friend and be like, hey, like, have I seemed off too lately? Like, can I talk to you about, like these things that I'm experiencing right now and stuff like that? I think that another thing is like, be very careful with self-diagnosis. I know yes. That for me, that like when I first did it, like, I was so set on, like, oh my God, anxiety and depression, like, da, 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 and I threw it out, like, just all the time. And I think that, my case isn't as severe as I thought it was. And I was, sort of upset in a way that it wasn't, because I just had run that story through my mind so much that it was. And when I learned it wasn't, it was, it was just shocking for me. But I think that, what I would say is that, like, don't go on WebMD and like look up your symptoms. Like, don't do that, but if you know something's like off or wrong, like, reach out to a friend, reach out to, trusted adult, or, just like, sort of just work through it. Even if you think, what you want to do is to start therapy, like, do it, that way you have a sort of a diagnosis that's like accurate and stuff like that. But I think that those are some of the symptoms for me. And again, I would just say be careful with self-diagnosis, because like people always joke about, like, if you search WebMD, like, you have a cough, like, they say you're going to die,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think, what I've learned, I mean, I was just, I was this little, like, 14-year-old searching on, like the internet about my symptoms. So I was so like, I wasn't sure of what I was doing at the time, but now I look at it and I'm like, oh crap, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But yeah, so I think, like, we'll just watch yourself, like, see, what's going on with you. But I think, just be careful where it takes you.
Yeah. Now, I guess you talked about that feeling of a lack of being able to control the situations and what was happening around you. And then there was that call to action where basically you started, I guess, making small steps in taking control of the situation. What do you think was the cause of that, like, that change? Because I mean, when you're in it, there can be that sense of helplessness and such, like, and you can see the light, but it's quite far in the distance as such, and there's, I guess, and it's not really clear how to get there so much. Yeah. So what helped you start moving towards the light?
Yeah, so I think that, like, when I first started to sort of take those small steps, like, developing healthy habits, I was already in therapy for a year, so that really started to help me. I mean, I keep talking about it, and I keep bringing it up, but it's something that's been so prominent in my life. So I was already in therapy for a year, so that was really something that I had, leaned on and relied on. I wasn't really doing anything else in my life besides, going to therapy, going to school, and like doing a few curriculars, activities in my school. So that was pretty much it for me. So I, like that was sort of the bulk of my work, the bulk of like, adjusting back to America and figuring out why I'm so anxious and like what happened in Israel that made me so anxious, and stuff like that. But I think that, when I had to start to decide to sort of implement these habits, it was, first of all, in a good period of my life. I was like not as depressed as I was before. So I was able to sort of think straight. But also when I sat down with my mentor that day, I was just like whining and complaining to her. I was like, I can't do this. Like, I feel like such a failure, whatever. And she was like, Sammy, like this time, like when you start, like, don't quit. Like keep that promise to yourself and don't quit because you can do it, And so I think that sentence, I remember that moment so vividly, and I was like, crap. I was like, damn it, like she caught me, And so I think that moment I was just like, you know what? Like, let me just do this. And I was like, if I don't do this for myself, like, let me just do this for her, because I was like, I know that she cares a lot and I want this to mean something. So I think that was my fuel to getting started. Obviously there were so many bumps in the road from, last year to now. My goodness, there were so many, but I think that, since then, like my brain has just been altered again. Like I'm still going to therapy to this day because there are other things that come up that I have never talked about in therapy before, and just like little things like that. So I think that, in terms of seeing the light, like it takes so much time. I'm not going to say it happens in 2 seconds. I'm lucky enough that I was sort of in a better position than the beginning of my sort of, my journey.
Yeah.
But when I was able to sort of see the light, but like I was struggling for 4 years before that, and the first 2-3 years, like I was so I was sad every day. I literally felt, I remember one day in my first year of high school, I had my teacher walk outside, like the assistant teacher in the classroom walk outside in the middle of the lesson. I told her, I was like, I feel like I'm drowning and I don't know how to put my head above water. Because I was like so overwhelmed with work. I was so overwhelmed with my own situation and, going on. I was so overwhelmed with everything that was happening inside my head. And I think I dealt with that honestly for 3 years. And I learned, to put on this mask and pretend everything was okay. That way I could function like a normal human being again. But really inside, like, it was just torturous. But then, when I realized like what I could do about it, I think I sort of started to see the up and up again. But I think that, I didn't have podcasts like this one or, like mine or like, whoever it is. And I think that that's why I do the work that I do, because I know that if people listen to this or listen to whatever else, and they hear that these are the things that helped me, that they can start that journey earlier and not have those 3 years of suffering like I did. I think that that's something that I look back on now. I look back on when I first started the journey and was like, you know what? No one should have that. No one should go through that the way I did. Maybe they suffer for 6 months to a year, but no one should suffer for 3 years the way I did with no answers, no nothing. You know what I mean? So I think that that's sort of my advice in a way is just like, take it slow, just get up, just try, the least you could do is just try and get up every morning out of bed, whether it's to go, brush your teeth, wash your face and get back into bed, or it's whether to change your clothes and get back into bed, like whatever it is, like, again, like one small thing every single day will change your life. I promise you that.
It's beautiful. Thank you, Sam. And earlier on in the piece, you mentioned you're working on a book. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Or is it a bit hush?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a little hush, but I mean, I'm so open to talk about it because I'm so excited about it. Yeah, so pretty much, I mean, in the beginning of sort of like my journey, and just the business side of it, I was blogging a lot about these different, tips and stuff like that. And, my favorite speech that I do is how to find your passion in three steps. And so I sort of collected all of my blog posts and, sort of like my speeches and stuff like that, and I put them together into a book. And this book, because in a blog post you can only write like 1,600 words, and so I'm so happy to be able to write 55,000 words, instead, because
Yeah.
as you can see, I love to talk, I love to write, I love to do all these things. So it's basically just a combination of how can you just literally up level your life and just give your life a whole 360. Like, how can you, figure out what your dream life is and then curate that dream life? How do you find your passion? How do you sort of take care of your health mentally and then physically? How do you, sort of deal with other people in your life, and how do you shift your mindset? There's so much goodness in this. And again, it's from inspiration from my mentor, who's actually currently writing, a self-help book / memoir about her own advice that she would give teens between the sort of the period of high school and college, and it integrates a lot of her own stories and memoirs that she's told us in class and things that she hasn't even told us yet. So it was such an inspiration off of that. There's no title for it yet, because I'm still in the midst of working on it, but it's something that I'm so proud of and I'm so excited for, because it really, like, every time people are like I need help, I want to give them all of these answers in this book, and you can't really give them all the answers in a DM and stuff like that. So I'm so excited to have people are like, I need help, I'll be like, here's the book, and sort of read through it. And it's just it's a mix of, because I'm a huge lover of like step-by-step processes and like acronyms and stuff like that. So there are a bunch of cool acronyms that I've made up. There are a bunch of step-by-step processes, but there are also a bunch of stories, and there's so much humor in it. I didn't even know I was funny until I started writing this book, but apparently I am. And so there are a bunch of stories that I've never told before on anything, and so I'm super, super excited about it. I'm hoping to get it published in like the next 2 years. But my mentor, she's been in the publishing sort of like process for a while now, so it may be longer than that. But it is something that I'm so excited about. It's my little pride and joy. Like I say, like all my business things, my children. So I'm super excited about it.
That's awesome. Hey, thank you, Sammi. Well, listen, I do keep in touch with regard to that, because I think even for myself, I'd be keen to have a bit of a read. And I mean, I've learned a lot from just you talking here today, but I'm sure that you've got a few good pieces in there that I could learn as well. So thank you again, and thanks for taking the time to spend with us today. I guess, is there anything that you wanted to leave us with today before we call it quits?
Yeah, no, I think I would just say like that, to your listeners, like, just be patient with yourself. Like, everything takes time, no matter, what it is. Like, I think that patience is something that I have developed that I didn't know I needed in life, and something that I need, for myself and for others and stuff like that. So just be patient with yourself. I know it's going to be frustrating, but it's just the way that life works. And with time, things will heal and things will open up for you. And it really will just become something for yourself. And just, make sure that you're taking care of yourself too.